Welcome back. Now, Cosatu is warning against the legal challenges over the controversial VAT increase. The Trade Union Federation says this could disrupt the country's VAT law systems. DA and the EFF have gone to court to challenge the adoption of the fiscal framework. Now, for more on this, Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks, joins me live. A very good evening to you, Matthew. Now, let's just start with why you're warning against legally challenging this upcoming VAT increase.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Look, at a political level, we oppose a VAT hike. We think there are plenty of alternatives to it, which we have ourselves submitted to Parliament, to Treasury, to government. We don't support any tax hikes which hurt the working class or the poor or the middle class. We think a VAT hike is exactly that kind of imposition upon the poor and workers. But our fear around challenging the legal framework for a VAT hike, and one can have those debates. There are merits and demerits to such a discussion. Our fear is to do it right now. It can really plunge the budget of the state into a crisis. It can plunge Parliament and government into a crisis. And, there are always political theatrics in Parliament and in society. But there's a real consequence if it succeeded. It would mean that the new budget that will come into effect would be put on hold. That can threaten the functioning of the state. It can threaten the ability of the state to pay salaries, to pay social grants, to invest in the economy, to fund public services. And we don't think we should be elevating politics above the function of the state, stimulating the economy, creating jobs and so forth. Really what the political parties should have done is to exhaust the parliamentary process to do that. And we think they unfortunately have made it life very complicated for all of us across party lines. The better option would have been simply for Parliament to oppose passing the budget, to have amended the budget, to remove the VAT hike, to remove the non-adjustment of the PIT tax brackets, as opposed to going to court and as opposed to rushing it through. So unfortunately, political parties across the political spectrum have put society into a bit of a crisis. But what do you think ultimately that politicians should rather have found space to negotiate amongst themselves, and they should have found an ability to hear each other and find a more sober, practical solution in cabinet, in Parliament itself. Going to court shows a failure of the political parties to do exactly that. And now we're risking playing Russian roulette with the function of the state and, of course, with the well-being of society. The other issue that DA and the EFF have challenged is around the procedures for the finance committees to have adopted the report on the budget. And we don't think that one has got legal standing. The finance committees exhausted the committee report. They went through it chapter by chapter, and us having engaged with parliamentary legal advisors as well, is that no, they have fulfilled the requirements. But I think for us, we need less political theatrics. We need more discussion amongst parties, amongst parliamentarians, and amongst cabinet to find solutions. But simply seeking to challenge the functioning of the state and how budgets are passed, we think that's a very risky gamble that could really have serious repercussions for all of us.
Yeah, and I hear you there, Matthew, about needing more, robust discussions as well and negotiations between the political parties. But what we have seen practically is that since our GNU, since the May 2024 elections, that these political parties failed to come to reach a consensus on many, many things. So would you not then understand why they've gone the legal route? Because to exhaust those routes that you speak of, they simply cannot, and have proven that they cannot.
No, we don't think we should be condoning the failures of politicians and seeking to find recourse in the courts. That creates a crisis for all of us, because the victims would be workers. It would be society at large who needs a stable, functioning government. Politicians must come to the party. They must learn to grow up. They must learn how to negotiate. Their failures should not be condoned, and they should not be outsourced to the rest of us. It shouldn't be outsourced to courts. Courts must look at the law. They should not be having to remedy and to babysit politicians who have failed to do the simple things of engaging each other. I think for us, it was quite unfortunate to hear in the public discourse that the VAT hike was only properly tabled in the cabinet on the morning of the budget itself. That's an unhealthy situation. We need to find a much more mature, much better ways to discuss issues, but also we should avoid this thing of waiting till 2 minutes to midnight to get serious issues processed. It really puts all of us in a difficulty. It is good that government has shown an ability to listen to society, to move away from a 2% VAT hike, to reduce it to 0.5% hike, possibly not to proceed with it further next year. But we should really avoid a scenario where we take budgets to Parliament and then 2 minutes before the speech is to be presented, it's withdrawn. We come back a month later, only 2 changes are made, and yet still they fail to find consensus in cabinet. And then again to exhaust things to the last second of parliament. It's not a healthy way to process issues. We appreciate it is a learning curve, to be fair to all the political parties. The ANC has always had an outright majority, has not needed to have this kind of negotiation before. Parties like the Democratic Alliance and other parties who are in cabinet are used to only being in opposition, so they're not really comfortable or sure how to govern in the transition and so forth. But we need these parties to adjust quickly because we have serious challenges as a society. We've got a 1% economic growth rate. We have 41% unemployment. We've got endemic levels of crime and corruption and poverty, of inequality. And this kind of theatrics doesn't help all of us. It doesn't breed confidence in society, doesn't breed confidence of workers or investors and so forth.
Hypothetically, if the EFF and the DA were to win this legal case, wouldn't that be a win for not only poor South Africans, but all South Africans?
It depends on how the judge considers it. Do they decide to then scrap a budget and send it back? Look, there is a plan B you could do in that instance, which the Constitution does allow, of delaying new expenditure, but then it puts into jeopardy a wage increase. It puts into jeopardy, in fact, it'll suspend or stop the social grant increases. It just becomes very, very messy. And honestly, we have plenty of space that these things could have been negotiated. And the inability of politicians to resolve their differences should not become the problem of society. Politicians should do what they're paid to do, which is to govern and to find solutions within that space. They should not take all of society along with them on the political roller coasters. Yes, there is space to find solutions to it, but again, we're making life more and more complicated, and we're delaying the ability of the state to focus on fundamental challenges of a stagnant economy, of very high levels of poverty and unemployment.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you just giving us a little bit more insights regarding Cosatu's viewpoints on this.